Chosen one, silence every distraction and focus on what I am about to say. This urge you are fighting, this desire to explain yourself, to defend yourself, to make others understand what you are going through, stop it immediately. The enemy is working overtime right now for one single reason: he almost lost you because of the secret. And if you stay silent long enough to hear this message, he will lose everything. Everything ends this week: the misunderstanding, the isolation, the feeling that your silence is costing you something. But here's what you must understand: it will not stop despite your silence, it ends because of it. Think back to that moment this week when someone provoked you, when someone ignored you, when someone tried to make you react and you swallowed your pride. You bit your tongue. You walked away. You closed the app. You chose not to respond. You thought it was weakness. You believed you were shrinking. But I need you to understand something that will completely change the course of your week. It was not weakness, it was activation. You did not stumble upon this message by accident. The algorithm did not flag this for you, the Most High did. This is a divine design written before the creation of the world. You are standing on the threshold of a purpose that very few people reach, because most people prevent their own breakthrough by talking too much. Do not scroll away. Your future self is on the other side of these next few minutes. If you leave before the end, you will be walking out of the courtroom just before the verdict is delivered in your favor. In the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the legal decree that explains exactly why your silence has been the most powerful weapon in your arsenal this season. I will explain how, without knowing it, your own restraint has sealed the enemy's plan against you. Finally, I will make the declaration that permanently closes this chapter, so that nothing from this season can follow you into the next. I know what the last 72 hours have been like. The silence wasn't just around you, it was strange, as if the world were moving at a different frequency and you couldn't quite tune in. Perhaps you withdrew without fully understanding why. Perhaps conversations feel empty. Perhaps you started to speak and then stopped mid-sentence, feeling something deep inside telling you to retract. Or perhaps you woke up at 3 a.m. this week, unable to fall back asleep, with an indefinable inner restlessness, as if something massive were about to happen. But the silence surrounding you made it feel as if nothing was moving. You feel like you are waiting in a room without windows. During this wait, the enemy began whispering a very specific lie directly into your thoughts. He tells you that your silence makes you invisible. He tells you that important people are forgetting you. He replays that moment when you chose not to speak up, when you let someone misinterpret you, when you didn't correct the narrative, when you simply kept quiet and let the world draw its own conclusions. He tells you that your silence has disqualified you, that your restraint was the mistake that set everything back. If only you had spoken, if you had explained yourself, if you had defended your name, things would be different today. But I need you to hear what the Word of God actually says about this moment. Exodus 14 verse 14 says, "The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." Listen to that. Not only be constant, not only be strategic, but be still. Heaven's instruction at the heart of your struggle is silence. It is the refusal to explain, to justify, to defend, or to act. For heaven does not need your agitation to win your battle. Heaven needs your obedience. And your silence is obedience in its most powerful form. The enemy is not afraid of your arguments. He is not afraid of your explanations. He is not afraid of your defense. He is terrified of your silence, because your silence is the signal that you have moved the fight to a court where he cannot enter, a jurisdiction where he has no standing, a throne room where your case is already decided in your favor. The weight you feel right now is not the weight of defeat, it is the weight of carrying something sacred. You carry a secret about your own power that has not yet been fully revealed. The pressure you feel is not the pressure of the enemy closing in, it is the pressure of the gift within you about to bloom. You are not invisible, you are undetectable. And the difference is profound. Invisible means ignored, undetectable means protected. Heaven has made you undetectable in this season so that what is being built in silence cannot be interrupted, contaminated, or stolen before it is finished. Your silence did not compromise your breakthrough, it sealed it. Some messages do more than inform, they activate. If something stirred deep within you just now, you may be ready to receive the plan of the chosen. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It includes the full audiobook so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or your moments of reflection with God. And for those called to proclaim His truth, you will also receive Activating Your Prophet's Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those on a prophetic mission. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now let this idea sink in, because what I am about to present is not a simple to-do list or a compilation of tasks to check off. It is not a formula or a simple equation where an input guarantees a predictable output. No, it is much deeper. It is a revelation, a sudden illuminating unveiling that will lift the veil on everything you have experienced, every confusing moment, every inexplicable delay, revealing the complex underlying architecture. It will highlight the divine framework that has been working for you, meticulously building your future, refining your character, and aligning your path, all while you were convinced nothing was happening. You thought you were in a void, but you were actually in a sacred foundry undergoing transformation. You felt abandoned, but you were being expertly shaped from the invisible realm by the very hand of God. The first thing you must understand with your whole being is that silence is not passive. The world's clamor, with its incessant demands for performance and immediate gratification, has insidiously taught you that silence is an absence, a void where nothing exists or is created. People whisper that silence means surrender, the white flag of defeat, the quiet capitulation that happens when you run out of arguments, energy, or things to say. But heaven, my dear, obeys an entirely different logic, a counterintuitive wisdom that transcends human understanding. In the divine economy, silence is not a mere pause. It is one of the strongest and most powerful spiritual postures a person can adopt. It is not the absence of war or the cessation of conflict. Rather, it is the profound and deliberate refusal to fight on the wrong battlefield. It is the wisdom to discern that some battles are not yours, some disputes are not yours, and some provocations do not deserve your precious, divinely ordained energy. In this season, you have refused. You have stood your ground with invisible strength, exercising a restraint that is less about weakness and more about a sovereign wisdom working within you. This very restraint, this quiet strength, has meticulously built something for you, a spiritual edifice so delicate and precise that human words, especially those born of frustration or defensiveness, would have demolished at the moment they left your lips, shattering its foundations. Your silence has been a sacred shield, a protective cocoon for a miraculous unfolding. Think of Elijah in the desert, that giant of faith, after his monumental victory on Mount Carmel. He was not silent because he had nothing left to say, he had just called down fire from heaven. He was silent because he was exhausted, completely spent, not only physically but also spiritually and emotionally. The immense weight of the mission, the fierce spiritual warfare, and the crushing burden of carrying God's truth to a corrupt generation had pinned him to the ground, leaving him unable to act, unable to utter a single prophetic word, unable to muster an ounce of strength. He had nothing left to offer, not even a whisper. And how did heaven respond to his deep and painful silence? Heaven did not send a sermon, a lesson on resilience, or a critique of his fatigue. Heaven asked nothing more of him. Instead, it filled his human frailty with divine providence. Heaven sent bread, brought by an angel, supernatural nourishment to soothe his physical hunger. Heaven sent water, refreshing his parched spirit. Heaven sent rest, allowing him to sleep and regain his strength, not once but twice. And then, in that famous moment of deep intimacy on Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, heaven followed him. Not in the devastating earthquake that split mountains and shattered rocks, a show of raw power. Not in the consuming fire that scorched everything in its path, a manifestation of divine judgment. Not in the violent wind that ravaged the landscape, a symbol of overwhelming power. But in a still, small voice, a delicate whisper, a sound of soothing calm, God answered Elijah's silence with his own profound silence, a sacred communion that transcended all earthly noise. In this silent and sacred exchange, the next chapter of Elijah's mission, the path forward, and the divine instructions for his successor were neither shouted nor demanded, but breathed into his exhausted soul. Silence was not an interruption of the mission, nor an obstacle, nor a sign of failure. It was the essential divine method for the next transmission, the very vehicle through which the new directive was conveyed. It was in this pause that purpose was rekindled and direction was revealed. And this is precisely what is happening to you right now, in this specific season. You are on your own mountain, standing amidst the aftermath of monumental upheavals. The earthquakes of life, which shook your foundations and tested your security, have passed. The trials, which refined your faith and tested your resolve, have arrived. The winds of change and uncertainty, threatening to blow you off course, have risen. People have come with their own cacophony, their disruptions, their provocations designed to spark a reaction, and their incessant demands for performance and attention. In the face of all this, you remain silent. Not because you are defeated, not because you have nothing left to give, and not because your spirit has withered, but because something deep and profoundly insightful within you recognized a truth. Know that the word you need, the essential instruction for your next step, the decisive revelation, will not come from external tumult, the demands of the crowd, or the echoes of past traumas. It will come precisely and perfectly in the silence, in the deep stillness you have cultivated. You are almost there. Oh, you are so incredibly close to hearing it, to grasping this profound truth that will redefine everything. The air around you is thick with anticipation, saturated with a divine word, waiting for you to simply be still enough to perceive it. But this is where it goes deeper, far beyond a simple moment of introspection. And this is what most people completely ignore, to their own detriment. Your silence is not just a protective barrier shielding you from wasting energy on things that do not deserve a response, things that would only drain your spiritual reservoir. It is doing something much more specific, much more strategic, and profoundly transformative. It exposes what is real. It is a divine rod searching for authenticity. For when you, the one who has often been the initiator, the interpreter, the responder, the central pillar of energy, fall silent, everything that depended on your energy to survive, everything that fed on your persistence, and everything sustained by your strength must reveal its true nature. Those who were linked to you only by what you could provide, by the validation or energy you supplied, or by the role you played in their story, begin to drift away like autumn leaves carried by a gentle breeze. Their connection was always conditional, and your silence only reveals its fleeting nature. Conversations maintained only by your constant energy, your efforts to sustain them, and your willingness to always initiate or mediate collapse, revealing a lack of authentic substance or reciprocal investment. Narratives built on the assumption that you would always react, always bite the hook, and always fuel their drama or their version of reality crumble into dust without your reaction to sustain and feed them. Your silence is a mechanism of revelation, a powerful spiritual sorting system. It sorts your world, readjusting your relationships and clarifying your path without you having to lift a finger, without argument or explanation. It is God Himself purifying your environment. King David, a man after God's own heart, intimately understood this profound spiritual principle. Psalm 37 verse 7, in its timeless wisdom, teaches us, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes." Notice what this instruction is not. It is not about fighting harder. It is not about shouting louder. It is not about correcting every person who misunderstood you, misrepresented you, or misinterpreted your intentions. No, the divine directive is much simpler, yet infinitely more powerful. It is about keeping silent. It is about waiting patiently with unwavering trust in God's perfect timing. It is about refusing to worry, casting off the anxiety, anger, and frustration that seek to consume your inner peace. For the outcome of this battle, the final verdict of your situation, is not a power that was ever in your hands. It rests entirely in the sovereign hands of the Almighty. The moment you, in your human impatience or desire for immediate justice, attempt to seize it to force a resolution and manipulate the outcome, you unintentionally interrupt the divine verdict. You prematurely snatch the scroll from the hands of the just judge, disrupting the perfect timing and execution of his justice. Your stillness clears the way for his perfect judgment. T allows the scales of justice to balance naturally under celestial authority. This brings us to a point that will deeply challenge and ultimately transform how you view this period. For too long, you have interpreted your isolation, the space that has opened up around you, as outright rejection. You interpreted the growing distance between you and certain people, certain situations, and certain familiar comforts as undeniable proof that something went terribly wrong, that you made a colossal mistake, or that you should have spoken or behaved differently to keep them very close to you. But I must completely reframe this narrative to dismantle the lie that has taken root in your heart. The isolation you feel is not rejection in the sense the world understands it. This isolation is a sacred displacement. Heaven is not removing people from your life or creating distance because you are inferior, unworthy, or because you failed. On the contrary, heaven is orchestrating a divine alignment. It is removing them because the next step of your life, the next level of your divine mission, and the fulfillment of your destiny require a different form of companionship, a higher vibrational frequency, and a deeper, more intentional level of responsibility and spiritual resonance. Sometimes, often even, the only way to bring you there gently but firmly, to introduce you to this new, more harmonious environment, is to make the old environment so deeply uncomfortable and so profoundly at odds with your spirit that you finally stop clinging to it, let go of the past, and allow yourself to be guided toward what is destined to be. This discomfort is not a punishment, it is a divine impulse. It is a sacred call toward your true alignment, much like a bird pushing its chicks out of the nest, not out of cruelty, but out of the awareness that they are destined to take flight. In a moment, I will reveal the hidden agreement you made without even realizing it, a silent alliance forged in the shadows of doubt, and how this subtle pact has been the true invisible lock hindering your progress, breaking your potential, and delaying your fulfillment. Stay with me, because what I am about to share is not a mere intuition. It is the crucial revelation that breaks the cycle, destroys the chains, and propels you toward the immense freedom of your destiny. But before that, before diving into this crucial revelation, you must soak in this truth. Let it penetrate your spirit and anchor itself deep within you. The profound unease you feel in this period of waiting, this invisible activity, and this silent hope does not mean God has forgotten you, that his attention has waned, or that your prayers have fallen on deaf ears. Far from it. This malaise, this stretching, this inner tension is paradoxically a profound sign of his incredibly close presence, closer than you have ever imagined, actively working behind the veil of the visible. For throughout the sacred tapestry of Scripture, the most profound and undeniable moments of divine intervention are always, without exception, preceded by a period of inexplicable silence, an apparent inactivity where human logic cries too late or impossible. Take the story of Lazarus, a narrative that echoes through eternity as a testament to God's strategic timing. Before Lazarus stepped triumphantly out of that tomb, resurrected from the clutches of death, there were 4 days of agonizing silence. For days where it seemed unequivocally that the story was over, that hope had perished, and that the miracle had completely bypassed them. 4 days during which Martha and Mary, consumed by grief and confusion, were overwhelmed by the weight of what seemed like an unanswered prayer, mourning the apparently final death of their brother. During those 4 days, Jesus was not absent. He did not linger, and he was not indifferent to their pain. He was meticulously and strategically preparing the precise conditions for a miracle so grandiose, so undeniable, that no trickery could explain it. For a man dead for 4 days, whose body has begun to decompose, whose death is attested and observed by many witnesses, cannot be challenged when he suddenly rises and walks out of his tomb, shedding his burial shrouds. His resurrection was indisputable, undeniable, and could be minimized neither by skeptics nor rationalists. This is precisely why the timing was so opportune. Jesus was not late. He was profoundly strategic, orchestrating a miracle that would amplify faith and confound all opposition. So, my beloved, understand this with unwavering conviction: you are in your 4 days. You are in this sacred and strategic period of profound silence before the undeniable manifestation. What is about to be born from this period, what is about to be revealed, what is about to manifest in your reality cannot be explained by any human logic, any earthly calculation, or any cynical rejection. It will be a testimony to the God who works in silence. Now, here is the hidden agreement, the silent pact that has subtly hindered your progress. In the very middle of this period, while you were diligently managing the profound silence, navigating the often painful isolation, and carrying the invisible weight of everything that seemed dormant or still, you began to make a discreet, almost imperceptible pact with your own doubt. You didn't announce it with great fanfare. You didn't even fully perceive the insidious nature of what was happening. But slowly, like frost covering a fragile plant, you began to shrink your vision. You began to negotiate with the ceiling of your potential, mentally lowering the bar, telling yourself that perhaps the dream God placed in your heart was a little too big, too bold, or too impossible for someone like you. You began to rationalize that perhaps this calling was for someone else, someone with fewer complications, fewer past mistakes, or a less tortuous journey. You began to believe that the version of yourself that fully embodies your divine identity is still so far away on the horizon that it simply isn't logical to believe in it fully or surrender completely to its power. In a cunning act of self-delusion, you called this adaptation wisdom. You labeled it managing expectations or a mature response to reality. You even convinced yourself you were being realistic, pragmatic, and grounded. But what lay behind all those sophisticated labels and rationalizations was actually pure fear, skillfully disguised in the deceptive language of maturity. It was fear whispering caution, wearing the mask of wisdom, when in reality it was a spiritual surrender to limitation. Heaven, whose unwavering gaze is fixed on your highest potential, is asking you to break this insidious agreement right now. Not tomorrow, when circumstances seem more favorable. Not after things have visibly changed and evidence aligns with your desires. No. Now, at this very moment. For the agreement you made with this self-imposed ceiling, this mental barrier of what you believe is possible for you, is precisely what keeps it in place. It gives power and authority to a limit that God never intended for your life. The moment you consciously and deliberately decide to cross it, you can change course. Stop negotiating with the limit immediately and permanently. As soon as you withdraw your tacit consent, that limit immediately loses its authority over you. It collapses like a house of cards because its power comes from your inner agreement, not a divine decree. This is precisely what happened to Abraham, our father of faith. The promise, the divine plan for his lineage and heritage, existed before any visible proof, before the slightest sign of conception, before Isaac, and before any tangible movement in the natural world. Abraham had to make a radical choice, to believe even before belief made logical sense, to have faith in the unseen, and to trust God's word above all contradictory circumstances. This was credited to him as righteousness. Not the result, not the birth of Isaac, not the flourishing of his descendants, but the bold decision to believe before the result arrived. To cling to the promise when everything pointed toward impossibility. This was his act of faith, his act of breaking with natural limits. Behold, my love, the moment of your decision. This is the moment you must choose between fear-based realism and the truth nourished by faith in God's unlimited promise for you. What follows will show you exactly why this particular period, the pressure you endured, the deep and inflexible silence you traversed, is not an obstacle, but the most fertile ground where your destiny has ever been sown, the very crucible of its most magnificent blooming. The enemy, the cunning adversary of your soul, has calculated and strategized, convinced that you would not make it through this trial without cracking, without surrendering to his provocations. He exerted targeted and specific pressure on this precise period of your life, because he knows with malicious precision what glorious and undeniable breakthrough lies on the other side. He meticulously studied your habits, your past vulnerabilities, and the moments when you are most likely to seek external validation, when you are most prone to over-explaining your position or performing for an audience that was never meant to witness the sacred purification process. With sinister intent, he sent specific provocations, calibrated with extreme precision to trigger those exact reactions. The rejected text message, deliberately ignored to spark a sense of insignificance. That person who seems to prosper effortlessly, apparently surpassing you while you remain hidden and struggling in the shadows. The opportunity that seemed a perfect fit but mysteriously went to someone less prepared and less qualified, leaving you to doubt your worth and your calling. These were not random events or mere coincidences of fate. They were targeted attacks, strategic strikes designed to derail you, discourage you, and disconnect you from your divine mission. But here, my dears, is what he did not foresee. He did not account for your deep and silent obedience to a higher calling. He counted on noise, on your predictable protests, but you, through divine grace, offered him silence. He calculated his reaction based on your impulsive response to injustice or provocation, but you offered him stillness, an unshakable inner peace. He bet everything on a collapse, on your inevitable surrender to the overwhelming pressure. Yet you are still here, standing rooted and unshakable against all his schemes. Every time you refused to react, every time you chose restraint over immediate defense, every moment you kept silent instead of joining the tumult, you were not just surviving a trial. You were actively building a legal case in the spiritual court. Your restraint, your unwavering integrity in the face of invisible pressure, and your constancy in silence accumulated as irrefutable evidence before the highest court of heaven. This evidence, this mountain of silent obedience, is about to produce a verdict, a divine judgment in your favor that will shake the foundations of your adversary's plans and irrevocably alter the trajectory of your destiny. There is a pattern, an undeniable blueprint found in the life of every person who has fully and unreservedly embraced their divine mission, without exception, from patriarchs to prophets to apostles, and now to you. Here is the central element of that model. They were all forced, at a critical, painful, yet ultimately formative moment, to let the wrong people believe false things about them long enough for the truth to exonerate them and reveal their true identity and purpose, without any personal involvement and without having to utter a single word of defense. Take Joseph the dreamer. He did not succeed in convincing Potiphar's wife of his innocence when she falsely accused him. He went to prison. He failed to convince the cupbearer, for whom he faithfully interpreted dreams, to remember him. He remained forgotten in the dungeons for 2 more years. He didn't even convince Pharaoh through a passionate argument or plea for justice. He was interpreted. His dreams, his innate wisdom, his integrity, and his extraordinary gift of interpretation were revealed through circumstances. He was justified not by his own defense or persuasive words, but by the undeniable fruit of what God had placed within him, by the manifestation of divine wisdom acting through his life.